MMC TV USA. Now on POTV, Channel 100.
Well, hello there once again and welcome to MMC World Roundup, where we connect you with the latest news from Sri Lanka and around the world. Before we dive into the details, let's take a quick look at what's making headlines today. Forty candidates have placed deposits for the 2024 presidential election as the deadline ends. The Cabinet of Ministers has granted approval for the proposed salary revisions across all sectors of the public sector. Sri Lanka released world's longest stamp symbolizing Kandi Asala Perahara. US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had accepted a bridging proposal. Well, taking a look at your news in detail, 40 candidates have placed deposits for the 2024 presidential election as the deadline ends. 4 candidates placed deposits within the final day for the placing of bonds, including MP Namal Rajapaksa from the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, Janaka Ratnayaka from the United Lanka Podujana Party, Lalit De Silva of the United National Freedom Party, and independent candidate Sarath Kumara Gunaratna. The Election Commission has stated that in total 40 individuals have placed deposits to contest the upcoming presidential election. This includes 22 candidates from recognized political parties, 1 from other political parties, and 17 independent candidates nominated by a voter. The placing of deposits related to the presidential election commenced on July 26th. Meanwhile, the Election Commission of Sri Lanka says that a total of 42 complaints have been received within the last 24 hours pertaining to the 2024 presidential election. Accordingly, 37 complaints related to the election law violations and 3 other complaints were reported. Among them, 20 complaints were filed with the National Election Complaint Management Centre and 22 were reported to the District Election Complaint Management Centre. The world's longest stamp, measuring 205 millimeters and symbolizing the historic Sri Dalada Perahara in Kandy, was released by the Postal Department of Sri Lanka. The commemorative stamp was presented to President Ranil Wickremesinghe, according to the President's Media Division. The Cabinet of Ministers has granted approval for the proposed salary revisions across all sectors of the public service. An expert committee chaired by former Presidential Secretary Udaya Seneviratne was previously appointed to prepare a report with recommendations for implementing these proposals in the 2025 budget. The committee engaged with major professional associations of public officials and the broader public sector, analyze relevant data, and finalize the report. Based on its recommendations, the Cabinet has approved the President's proposal to include these salary revisions in the 2025 budget. The Telecommunications Regulatory Commission of Sri Lanka has officially issued a telecommunications service provider license to Elon Musk's Starlink, the satellite unit of SpaceX, to provide satellite broadband services in Sri Lanka. This license authorizes the company to provide satellite broadband services in Sri Lanka from August 12, 2024. The development follows a recent meeting between President Ranil Wickremesinghe and Elon Musk in Indonesia, where they discussed expediting the application process to connect Sri Lanka to the Starlink network, aiming to enhance Sri Lanka's access to high-speed internet. The TRCSL has issued a telecommunications service provider license under Section 17B of the Sri Lanka Telecommunications Act No. 25 of 1991 as amended to Starlink Lanka Private Limited for the provision of satellite broadband services in Sri Lanka, a statement said. The Wages Board has issued a gazette stipulating 1,350 rupees as a daily wage and a productive incentive of 350 rupees for tea and rubber sector workers. The gazette signed by the chairman of the Wages Board, HKKA Jayasundara, states that the daily minimum wage for plantation workers is set at 1,350 rupees and this wage is to be paid subjected to the payments for the Employees Provident Fund and Employees Trust Fund as mentioned in the Gazette notification. Additionally, the chairman of the Wages Board has indicated in the Gazette that any objections to these proposals must be submitted to him before 12 noon on August 28th, accompanied by a statement explaining the reasons for the objections. The government has granted approval for the importation of 3,000 metric tons of raw ginger over the next 3 months, said the cabinet spokesperson. This approval was given based on a joint proposal presented by the Minister of Agriculture and Plantation Industries and the Minister of Trade, Commerce and Food Security. During the cabinet meeting held on July 15th, instructions were given to the Secretary of the Ministry of Agriculture and Plantation Industries and the Secretary of the Ministry of Trade, Commerce and Food Security to jointly explore the possibility of reducing the retail price of ginger to a level affordable to consumers in the local market by facilitating the production of ginger. They were also directed to submit a report with appropriate recommendations in this regard. Accordingly, based on the recommendations in the report they submitted, the above cabinet proposal was approved. The 10th edition of the India-Sri Lanka Joint Military Exercise Mitra Shakti commenced at the Army Training School in Maduroya, Sri Lanka. Scheduled to run from August 12th to the 25th, 2024, this exercise marks a significant milestone in enhancing military collaboration between the two nations. The Indian contingent, comprising 106 personnel, is represented by a battalion from the Rajaputna Rifles alongside members from other arms and services. The Sri Lankan side is represented by personnel from the Gajapa Regiment of the Sri Lankan Army. This annual training event alternates between India and Sri Lanka, with the previous edition held in Pune in November 2023. The primary objective of Joint Exercise Mitra Shakti is to bolster the joint military capabilities of both nations for counter-insurgency operations in a sub-conventional scenario in alignment with Chapter 7 of the United Nations mandate. The focus of this year's exercise will be on operations in a semi-urban environment. Cricketer MS Dhoni-backed drone technology firm Garuda Aerospace announced its entry in the Sri Lankan market, where it will primarily target agricultural sector to enhance farming practices, besides exploring opportunities in homeland security and industrial applications. As part of the company's global expansion plans, the foray into Sri Lanka will also support Garuda in capitalizing on the country's strategic location and drone-friendly regulatory environment, Garuda Aerospace said. The company said it is looking to spread its presence in at least 50 countries over the next few years and have set aside $10 million of the over rupees 100 crore revenue it delivered in FY24 to fuel the international growth. Garuda Aerospace, which produces small and medium category drones, had partnered with Greek manufacturer Spirit Aeronautical Systems early this year. It has also signed a pact with French aerospace giant Thales to promote growth and innovation in India's drone sector. Sri Lanka's talismanic skipper Chamari Athapattu beat Hotfield by overcoming India's star openers Smriti Mandhana and Shefali Verma to win the ICC Women's Player of the Month for July 2024. Athapattu led Sri Lanka to a maiden Women's Asia Cup 2024 title over seven-time champions India during the month. This is the third ICC Women's Player of the Month award for the 34-year-old, making her the joint second most successful cricketer in the Women's Player of the Month arena, tied at 3 awards with West Indies' Hayley Matthews, sitting behind Australia's Ashley Gardner. This triumph was yet another feat under Athapattu's command in recent times. Over the last 12 months, Sri Lanka have set several milestones under her leadership, including first ever T20I series wins against England and South Africa. Sri Lanka also featured in the ICC Women's T20 World Cup Qualifier 2024 in April-May of 2024 in Abu Dhabi and won all their games to qualify for the global mega event in October. But July was all about Athapattu's contribution to the historic Women's Asia Cup triumph. The project to digitize Sri Lanka's television broadcasting system, which started in 2019, was halted due to the suspension of foreign loans due to the economic crisis faced by the country. With the success of the debt restructuring agreements made with the IMF, the Japanese government has agreed to provide loan assistance again. The Japanese government has decided to quickly restart the huge project with a total project cost of 17 billion yen under a loan amount of 13.5 billion yen. A special discussion on this was held at the minister's invitation under the patronage of the Japanese ambassador to Sri Lanka, Mizukoshi Hideaki, at the Ministry of Mass Media. Presently, television broadcasting in Sri Lanka is done under analog technology, and under this project, the plan is to convert television broadcasting to digital technology. Through this, the people of Sri Lanka will have the facility to watch all television channels under digital HD technology without paying any money. In this discussion, special attention was paid to the prompt initiation of this project with the support of the Japanese government, with the technical and financial support of JICA. The Wildlife Conservation Department will carry out a countrywide elephant survey for the first time in 13 years, a senior official said. The department's Director General Chandana Surya Bandara said they would carry out the survey in 3,130 locations. He noted that the survey would focus on population dynamics, the current condition of the elephant population, the sex ratio, and related details for a comparison study with previous data. The Director General said that during the survey they would not close wildlife parks or hold safari rides, but would stop close wildlife parks or hold safari rides, but would stop accommodating visitors at wildlife bungalows as they would be required to accommodate survey officials. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had accepted a bridging proposal presented by Washington to tackle disagreements blocking a ceasefire deal in Gaza and urged Hamas to do the same. Blinken spoke to journalists after a day of meetings with Israeli officials, including a 2.5-hour meeting with Netanyahu. The top U.S. diplomat had said earlier that this push was probably the best and possibly last opportunity for a deal. Talks in Qatar seeking a ceasefire and hostage return agreement last week paused without a breakthrough, but were expected to resume this week based on the U.S. proposal to bridge the gaps between Israel and Hamas. Blinken's visit comes as the U.S. president faces mounting election pressure over his stance on the conflict, with his Democratic Party starting its national convention on Monday amid pro-Palestinian protests and worries about Muslim and Arab American votes in swing states. Chinese car maker Zeekr says its new electric vehicle batteries charge faster than any of its rivals, including industry leaders Tesla and BYD. The firm claims its upgraded batteries can be charged from 10% to 80% capacity in 10.5 minutes using its ultra-fast charging stations. In comparison, Elon Musk's Tesla says a 15-minute charge allows its Model 3 to cover 175 miles, a little under half the car's full range. Zeekr's 2025 007 sedan, which will be available from next week, will be its first vehicle to have the new battery. The battery performs well even in cold weather, charging from 10% to 80% of its capacity in less than half an hour at temperatures as low as minus 10 degrees, the company also said. In May, Zeekr's shares started trading on the New York Stock Exchange, marking the first major U.S. market debut by a Chinese company since 2021. The shares are currently trading 27% below the price set in its initial public offering. Consumer prices in the U.S. rose at the slowest pace in more than 3 years last month, bolstering the case for the central bank to start cutting interest rates. Overall prices rose 2.9% over the last 12 months to July, the smallest annual increase since March 2021 and down from 3% in June, the Labor Department said. The monthly inflation report was being closely watched after signs of weaker than expected jobs growth in July sparked stock market turmoil and recession fears earlier this month. Analysts said the figures should help convince the Federal Reserve that high borrowing costs are working to return inflation back to normal despite upticks in housing and food costs. The Federal Reserve has held its key lending rate at 5.3%, a roughly two-decade high since July 2023, a move that has hit the public in the form of higher rates for mortgages, credit cards, and other loans. By keeping rates high, the bank is hoping to discourage borrowing and cool the demand pressures that were helping drive up prices of homes, cars, and other items. But the central bank is under pressure to cut rates as inflation, which tracks the pace of price increases, has started to move closer to its 2% target rate, helped by lower oil prices and resolution of COVID-era supply chain crunches. The three major stock indexes in the US were little changed after the report, which came in roughly as expected. Well, that wraps up our news coverage for today. You can catch us on Pio TV, Samsung TV, LG TV, Apple TV, YouTube and Facebook Live, reaching the entire United States and across the globe. Thank you so much for joining in with us today. Until next week, have a fabulous week ahead.
To catch the full program and more, subscribe to MMC TV USA on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram and TikTok.